The sharp voice rang out, slicing through the salt-laced breeze like a whistle before a storm. "You don't belong here, old man. This ship is restricted." Tourists turned, cameras paused mid-record, children clutched their parents. All eyes locked onto the confrontation unfolding on the weathered deck of a decommissioned Navy ship now turned museum. Standing stiff as a mast was a young officer, chest puffed, clean lines in his uniform, and fire in his voice. But the man he faced, the one drawing all this wrath, didn't flinch. He stood calm, cane in hand, his back straight as steel, gaze steady. To most, he looked like any other weathered visitor, too old to pose a threat, but something about the silence he carried unsettled the air itself. He wasn't there for show. He wasn't there by accident, and he sure as hell wasn't about to be moved by a loud voice and shiny brass. He wore a coat frayed at the sleeves, faded by time and memory. If you looked close enough, you could just make out the ghost of military pins long removed, their outlines still impressed like the stories that lived under his skin. His name was William Rourke, but no one had asked. His hands rested gently on a cane he didn't truly need. His breath was steady. He didn't answer the officer's barked demands, didn't offer a defense. There was a reverence in his stillness, a quiet reminder that some places aren't visited, they're returned to. And William had returned. Not for the museum, not for the plaques or guided tours, but for the ship itself, for what it meant, for who it held. The officer mistook that silence for defiance. He had no idea he was standing in front of living history. "Last warning," the officer barked again, rising with every ignored command. His boots struck the deck with impatience as he approached. "You will be escorted off this vessel if you don't comply." The tourists grew uneasy. Some looked away, others started filming. A few whispered, "Was this really happening?" William didn't move. He slowly turned his eyes toward the officer, but they didn't lock in confrontation. They drifted across the steel underfoot, as if seeing something far beyond the rust and wear. Memories burned into the metal. The scent in the air wasn't just salt and oil to him. It was blood, smoke, and sacrifice. The officer didn't notice the subtle way William's grip tightened around the cane. He didn't hear the echo of boots running across this deck decades ago. All he saw was an old man out of place. But the old man? He saw ghosts the young officer could never comprehend. It had been nearly 70 years, a lifetime ago. William had stood on that very deck as a fireball erupted only feet away, throwing men into the sea and steel into the sky. Kamikaze aircraft had turned the ocean red that day. He remembered the screaming, the smoke so thick it painted shadows where sunlight should be. He dragged men out of burning corridors with nothing but his arms and sheer will. He remembered holding a boy, no older than 19, whispering lies about safety as life slipped from the boy's eyes. He still remembered his name. He remembered all of them. The creak of the deck beneath his boots now was identical to the one that cried under him as he carried bodies to safety. To William, the ship was alive. It was memory. It was sorrow and love, survival and death. It was not a museum. It was sacred. And every year since its decommissioning, he returned quietly. No fanfare, just remembrance. Until this year. This year, the post had been assigned a new officer, Lieutenant Marcus Hale, young, ambitious, bound tight to regulations like they were stitched into his uniform. To Hale, the ship was a line on a map, a duty post, a structure to protect. And William? Just another trespasser, another name to report. Hale didn't see the years on William's face as earned. He saw them as irrelevant. "You have no authorization to be here," he snapped, voice sharp, rehearsed. "This is your final chance. Leave now or face detainment." William said nothing, not out of disrespect, but out of something much older. His silence was grief. It was memory. It was weight. And yet somehow, that stillness was louder than Hale's bark. The crowd held its breath. Then from the edge of the pier, boots struck the wood in unison. Not tourists, not museum staff, but men in uniform, real ones, decorated, intentional. A column of naval officers approached, walking with purpose. Their presence shifted the air. Commander Elijah Trent led the group. a man whose service record ran longer than most officers' careers. His gaze was steady, his stride exact. The crowd parted as they boarded the ship. Hale stepped back instinctively, his hand resting on the hilt of authority, but wavering. Commander Trent made no announcement. He simply stopped before William Rourke, drew himself to full attention, and offered the kind of salute reserved only for those whose stories shape legacies. William returned it, slowly, with a hand that remembered every fold of the flag. "What is this?" Hale demanded, voice cracking under pressure. "Sir, this man is trespassing. I was just—" "Silence!" Trent interrupted, not with volume, but with finality. He turned to the gathered sailors and officers behind him. "This man," he declared, "is William Rourke, a survivor of the USS Cormoran's final battle. He remained aboard as it burned. He saved 14 men. He earned his right to this deck with blood." The silence was immediate, crushing. The crowd, tourists, veterans, officers alike, straightened their backs. Phones lowered, whispers died. All eyes turned not to Hale, but to Rourke. "While others fled," Trent continued, "he stayed. While men screamed, he acted. This ship lives because of him. He has more claim to her than any of us ever will." Hale's face lost its color. He looked to his badge for stability, but it now felt like weight dragging him under. His authority, once firm and polished, now crumbled beneath the truth. No rule book could save him from the shame of his ignorance. He had challenged not just a man, but a legacy, and he had lost. A few sailors saluted William on instinct. One kneeled briefly beside the deck, hand resting on the steel as if to feel the past buried within it. Something sacred had been stirred, and everyone knew it. The fallout was swift. Hale, reported by witnesses and recorded by half a dozen phones, was relieved of duty by sundown. His fixation on protocol had blinded him to the soul beneath the surface. And in the Navy, you can't lead if you forget who built the path you walk on. William Rourke didn't ask for his badge to be taken. He didn't cheer when Hale was dismissed. He simply turned back toward the edge of the ship, the same railing where he'd whispered to ghosts each year. One young sailor approached him, offered an arm. William declined. He didn't need help, but he did rest a hand on the sailor's shoulder. Just for a moment, a silent passing of the torch. Respect isn't given, it's earned, and sometimes it's passed on without a single word. As the sun began its slow descent, casting gold across the aging vessel, William took one last look across the deck. His fingers ran along the cold steel, not for comfort, but remembrance. This wasn't a victory, it was a ritual, a goodbye, and maybe a promise. He walked down the gangway at his own pace, past rows of saluting sailors, past silent onlookers, past history itself. He didn't wave. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence had already said everything. Dignity isn't loud. It's the quiet strength that remains after everyone else has spoken. And William Rourke was all dignity. Some men don't need monuments or speeches. They don't need fanfare or fame. All they need is to stand where they once bled, where they once gave everything, where their brothers still whisper in the wind. And in those moments, they remind us all that true honor isn't worn on a chest. It's carried in the soul. This ship remembers William Rourke, and so will we. For those who've served, for those who've endured, for those who still carry silent wars, this story is for you. Tell me, where are you watching from? And what did this story mean to you? Share your thoughts below, and subscribe for more stories that honor those who never needed to speak to be heard.